everyone, welcome to my video. Today I will be discussing my tutorial project for our game studio class. We will be running through the game, discuss the blueprints, and talk about my overall experience for this project. So let's get started. Let me just zoom in a little bit for now and hit play. So as you can see, we have our sprite man here on the screen, and now it shows that our mission is to reach the control room, and we can press E for controls. So at the bottom left part of the page, we have the controls being shown, and there's WASD for movement, spacebar for jump, left shift for sprint, and E to hide or show the help menu. Perfect, so we just ran through the game. As you may have noticed, the game is primarily composed by Unreal Engine's assets, which are provided in our tutorial guide, which is also provided by Unreal Engine. It's totally free and you will be able to use it yourself. I will link it down below in the description for you if you're interested in learning Paper 2D by Unreal Engine as well. So I have not put any other mechanics other than roaming through the map and dying from these spikes over here. So if I die, it will just take me back to the starting location and let me know that I have died and to try again. So let's move on to the next part of the maps and just, oh no, I died. I'm really bad at platforming games, but I do enjoy playing them a lot. I can spend hours and hours playing platforming games, you know. Anyway, we can move over to this part of the map, which is close to our end goal, which is the control room. I don't have any animations because I'm just working with what I have been given. I put a collision here so that the player cannot move across the levels. Either way, it's just surrounded by spikes, and the game tells me that I reached the door. Thank you for playing. Press escape to exit. If we hit escape, it will close the game. Alrighty, so as you can see guys, for my tutorial project, I have four top level folders, specifically characters, core, environment, and maps. I'll be going through each one of them. So for the maps one, it's basically just the levels and tile maps that I have used for the game. For this particular project, I used two tile maps, which is the playing area and the background. This is because for some reason, after creating around 10 or more layers for my playing area, the game is glitching. Like the character keeps on falling out of the map for no reason, and I've checked the Unreal Online forums and there's basically no solution to this unless you manually change the position of the character, which I did, but it was very hard. So I just decided to make a separate background, which worked out for me. I don't know if it's a good solution or not, but it worked and it turned out to be pretty okay and I liked it. So as you can see, I have two levels, which is the top-down factory and the factory level. The top-down factory is just for the top-down level that the tutorial from Unreal Engine has provided, and I'll not be showing any of it because I'll be focusing on the side scroller tutorial project that I just made. So you have two tile maps like I've discussed earlier. I have the tile map for the factory, the tile map for the background. the background has 100 times 38 tile sets. I mean, not tile sets, it's just tiles. Sorry. So it's 100 by 38 tiles. As you can see, it's pretty wide. The reason why it's pretty wide is because the camera, if it's set to a certain angle, like for this one, the character will spawn here on the player start. So you can see this is the edge of the playing area. So imagine if the background wasn't here. Let's just take this one out real quick. So you can see if this is the camera, it's just like a black background, and I didn't like it. So I made the background, and now it looks more natural and like a real game at least. You know, it's not like, you know, surrounded by a dark void of nothingness. And I'm pretty much enjoying the most out of this project by designing this level, and even the background is pretty detailed, at least from, you know, from utilizing what was given to me, which was the Unreal Engine free assets provided in the tutorial. So moving on, now we're done with the maps, we have the environment folder. So maybe you're wondering why I have an environment folder and a maps folder. The reason is that we can use the assets from the environment folder to any other level other than the factory level. Like for example, we need to have a boss room. We can still utilize these assets from the tile sets in the environment folder instead of having the tile sets copy and pasted to each level. I don't know if it makes sense. I hope it does, but it's much better to keep like this one separated from the maps folder. Next, we'll be going on through the characters folder, which basically just contains our character. For now, I called it default. I should have called it sprite man. You know, it would have made sense, and it's totally like my thing to call things like sprite man, but now I regret not naming it sprite man. So I have these folders. So from the default, I have animation and then movement, and these are the movement animation folders that I have. We have inside, for example, inside walk, we have a walk texture, a sprite sheet. We have the sprites used to make the paper flip book. You're probably wondering what's a flip book. It's basically what Unreal Engine uses to create animations like this one. So you attach multiple sprites and then it automatically puts it into a time frame. You can manually do it as well, but I did it automatically, just copy and pasted all the sprites to here, and it automatically does the thing for you. It's pretty awesome. So we close this one up, and it's basically all the same for all the animations here in each folder. So I'm gonna skip through that and move over to the core folder, which contains the fundamental blueprints and assets used in our game. So we have the characters folder, we have the game mode, we have the GUI folder, graphics user interface folder. So we have the game mode folder, which contains our tutorial mode, which is our game mode. I'm not going to open it because I haven't used it for the entirety of this project. I just changed the default pawn class, which is our blueprint character, blueprint default character. So there's really not much to it, so I'm not gonna check it out, but I'm going to be moving on towards the blueprints now. So for the characters, I have two, which is the default character and the default top-down. Like I previously stated before, I'm not going to discuss the top-down because I haven't really use the top down for this project. I used the side scroller. So I'm gonna open blueprint default. I should have named him Sprite Man. Okay, so I have a function. Let's check our event graph first. So our event graph, we have a movement control, an animation category, and this one is not categorized at all. It's because it's basically just an event where when you press escape you will quit the game. So I'm not gonna discuss it too much. I'm gonna discuss two of these categories for most of the time. Sorry for that ping, it's my phone. I will discuss it now. So I have this event tick, which is an event that is being called every frame. I will discuss it after discussing the input axis move right, because it's fundamental and is like the most important thing to here in our eventing event. Sorry. Alright, so moving on, I have the input axis move right, which takes the axis value of our event. So it basically just checks if the character is moving to the right. So it takes the axis value and compares it if it's greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, it means that it's positive. So if it's positive, it's moving to the right. Imagine a Cartesian plane. In the x-axis, 0 is the center, which means that's where our character is at. If the character is moving to the right, they're moving towards the positive values, and if they're moving towards the negative values, it's below 0, which means they're moving to the left. So if it's true, like I previously stated below, this Boolean variable is moving right will be true, and we will add the axis value to our movement. So we'll add movement to our character, which will move our character to the right. And if it's false, it has another branch, and it will check if the character is moving towards the left. So it's the axis value again being compared to 0, and right now it's less than. Earlier it's greater than. So if it's less than, it means moving to the left. So is the character moving to the left? If it's true, then is moving right will be set to false, and the corresponding axis value will be added to the movement input. Now, if ever that both of these branches turn out to be false, it means that the character is not moving. It will also add movement input to our character, but it should be 0 because it's not moving. Alright, so that's basically it for that one. Now we move on to the event tick. So for the event tick, we have handle animation and update walk speed at the start. It's because handle animation keeps the animation in sync, and the update walk speed keeps the character updated on their walking speed. After that, we compare the float of our character movement x velocity and 0. So 0 means the character is not moving, and then greater than is the right, and less than is to the left. So if the velocity is equals to moving to the right, is moving to the right, true. If it's equals 0, if it's equals to 0 and true, it will set the control rotation to the right, because that is the default direction that the character is facing towards to. So if it's greater than, this branch will return true execution. It will force the controller to rotate the character towards the right. And as you can see in the rotator, the default value is 0, 0, 0, because the default is the right direction. Now, if ever that the velocity is less than 0, it means that the character is facing towards the left. Now, it will go to this false execution and force the controller to rotate our yaw value or z-axis to 180, and it will automatically rotate the character to face towards the left. We can demo it out. Give me 1 second. As you can see, it's correct and it works. Perfect. Alright then, so the next part is to determine which direction the character is moving to. I'm going to zoom in our blueprint just in case for the video. So the next part is this one, which is the input action run. I'm gonna get back to it. It's kind of blurry when it's doing that, sorry. Just gonna click X on the magnifier. I thought it would help. Okay, we have 2 input action events, which is one for run and one for jump. So how did we set the input actions? We set it through project settings, input, and as you can see, there are action mappings here. For our jump, we have up, space bar, and the gamepad face button bottom. And for the run, we have left shift. So whenever that key are pressed, the action mappings are automatically enabled or pressed in Unreal Engine. So there's already a pre-made function for that. Sorry, not function, event. Anyway, once the input action run is pressed, so the left shift, it will set this boolean variable is running to true, and vice versa, which means when you release it, it will set the boolean variable to false. As for the jump one, we have our own functions provided by Unreal Engine, which is jump and stop jumping. So when you press jump, it will trigger this function, and if you release it, it will trigger the stop jumping function. Next, update walk speed, which is an event that I have mentioned earlier. It's just basically this custom event that checks if the character is running or not. If they are running, it will set the walk speed to a value of 400, and I promoted it to a variable called run speed. And for the walking, I just set it to around 200. So these values are very useful for like future use. But as for now, let's just keep it at that. As for the animation, we have an animation handle animation event, which sets the flipbook animation of the sprites and organizes the animation being played. So for this one, it's being called every frame by the event tick. So it keeps being updated. And at the start of this one, we have a branch that checks if the character is walking. From my own understanding, is walking is just basically a function that checks if the character is on the ground, or it's touching the ground, or a collision on the ground. And since walking, running, and staying in put means that you're staying on the ground, this will return as a true value. And if it's a true value, the animation will be set to looping. So we have a function here that sets this boolean variable to true, which is called new looping, and it will loop the animation, keep on updating it. But now maybe you're asking, how will the code be able to know which animation to choose? Because we have multiple ones, right? If you can remember, there are like 6 folders of animation from earlier. Like there's a running animation, a walking animation, a jumping animation. Now for the program to know which one to use, we use this select option that has their corresponding indexes. So for the first select, we have to check if is running is true or false. If the character is running, the code will use this run animation. If it's false, it will use this walk animation. But before it uses the walk animation, it will check again using this select option again, which has an index that gets the velocity of the x-axis and checks if it's equal or not equal to 0. So it basically checks if the player has moved, because if it's negative or positive, it means the character is moving left or right. If it's not moving, it will be equal to 0. So if it's not equal to 0, it would mean that the character is walking, so it will we should put the return value to true. And for the false, we just put the idle animation, means the character is not moving at all. And we attach it to this new animation in the update flipbook animation function we have here that is being called. So the update FB animation is here on our function, and it's basically checks if the current animation and the new animation being called is the same. If it's the same, nothing will happen, it just remain as is. And if the blueprint is calling a new animation, it will then set the new animation as the new animation to the sprite, and it will play from the start. So that's basically it for our update flipbook animation. What if the character though is falling from the sky or jumping? So basically they're not walking because they're not touching the ground. So this branch will move on to the false execution and move on to this branch here. And in this branch, it checks if the character is falling. So are they falling? Are they above the ground? If true, the looping of the animation will be set to false. So the animation will only play once. And if it's false, it will not do anything, because it's set to loop. It's set not to loop. So it will just reset back once it hits the ground. Sorry, that was my alarm. Anyway, let's move on to the jump animation. For the jump animation, we have this event begin play, which starts at the beginning of the game, and we have this bind event to on reach jump apex, as well as bind event to on end play, which we created two events specifically. There are two custom events. We'll discuss them both right now. So we have on jump apex reach, which means that once the character reaches the apex of their jump, and apex is the highest point of their jump, update animation will be this update animation will then be executed, and it's going to move on to the air transition animation. So once they reach the top from the jump animation, they move on to the transition animation. And this part here, the event on jumped, just resets the apex notification after every jump event to handle the animation sequences correctly. So every time the character is jumping, the apex is being notified that, oh, he jumped. And then once they reach the apex, it will be there will be a new animation, and then once they hit the ground, it will just reset and reset. Okay, I hope it makes sense. Oh no, it auto-saved. Okay. Next, we'll be moving on for this part of the falling animation. So we have on FB playback complete, which basically checks if the 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 flipbook is currently on transition. So remember, we have this on jump apex reach. So once it is on transition, which means that it's on the highest point, it will then move on and update to the falling animation after it finishes the apex animation. I mean the transition. So it's pretty cool. So once it reaches the apex, the animation changes, and once the apex is reached, animation changes the next frame. So it makes like this smooth jumping transition. So we have this one as well, which is just an event on walking off ledge that checks if the character is falling off a ledge, and it just updates the animation to like a falling animation every time it checks that the character is falling off a ledge. And then last part, we have this one, which is shows help menu when E is pressed and vice versa when E is triggered again. So when E is pressed, there's a flip-flop function here that for E, we create this menu widget and add it to viewport, and if we press it again, it will remove the widget. I'm gonna show it to you guys for the next part. So we're done with the blueprint character. Okay, we're moving on to the game mode. I didn't really make any changes to the game mode. It's basically just me changing the default pawn to the blueprint default character. So for the GUI, we have fonts and the HUDs. For the fonts, I just used this two that was basically downloaded from an online source. I will source it on the description below. And for the HUD, I have 4 HUDs. We have a HUD for the intro, a HUD for the help menu, for the death, and for the outro. So for the intro, we have a HUD stating that it's basically an animation sequence. States that the mission is to reach the control room, and then press E for controls. So for the graph, we just basically have, once the widget is created in the viewport, it just plays through the animation that I have created here in the widget blueprint, and then it is removed from the parent after it's been executed. So I put this widget blueprint onto the level sequence. Let's open the level. So as you can see, it's an on actor begin overlap, which means that I have put a collision here on the start, which is a box trigger. If the character collides with it, it will trigger and create the widget added to viewport, and after the play animation sequence is created, it will automatically the collision box will be automatically destroyed to avoid repetition of the same widget over and over again. Next, we have the help menu, and if we open that one up right now, it will show you guys this the WASD arrow keys for move. It's just basically showing you the controls for the game. For the graph, we have an event construct and a remove custom event. So for the event construct, it's basically playing the animation in our animation sequence as is, which is basically moving our canvas panel over to the right to center it to our screen. And we have a custom event that plays our animation in reverse, which means that once we go through here, and if we remove the widget, it will move towards the left. I put the I already discussed the blueprint for this one. It's located at the character blueprint. This one is for the flip-flop that I told you guys before. So as you can see, for A it's created, and for B it's removed. So it would make sense that if it's created, it will slide to the right, and if it's removed, it will slide to the left. Perfect. And next we have the death HUD. So the death HUD is basically just a feed text that will show that they died once you hit the spikes, and it will just after that text, you will just be teleported right back to the player start. And the outro is basically just like a box trigger again, like the first part. It's just once you hit this box trigger over here, it will automatically show you this HUD. I'm going to show you guys here in the level blueprint. So if you hit the end trigger, it will create the widget and add it to viewport. So it states that thank you for playing, and you reach the goal, and then you just have to click escape to exit the game, because there's no way to move forward once you reach that control room. I put like a collision here on one of the bars on the left side, so the player can't move through the left part of that control room. And as for the right, it's just spikes. You cannot move towards that bar up the door. It's too high. So the only way is to exit the game. So I'm forcing you to quit. Anyway, for the spike collision, which means this one here, I put a box trigger again. So I don't know if you can see it, it's color green. And if you hit it, give me 1 second, if you hit it, it will cast to character and basically disable the input, which means you can't control your character. The widget will be then created, so it is added to the viewport. So it says you died, try again. And then after that, there's a 1 second delay, and then during that 1 second delay, you will be teleported to our start location, which is basically the location of the player start. So once you have been teleported, the controls will be enabled again, and you will be able to move your character. So that's basically it for my blueprints and my folder structure. I hope you enjoy my game, and I hope this has given you some interest to learn Paper 2D on Unreal. And I hope to see you on my next video, because I'll be uploading another video after this discussing my custom tutorial project. This one is just basically me utilizing Unreal Engine's free assets. For the second game that I have created, I utilize third-party assets that are free to use, and I will source everything. And as I have also added a lot of mechanics on that game. So I hope to see you again, and see you soon. Goodbye.